the heck's going on? We doing the show or what?
Hi, Gary.
Hi!
It's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah. I haven't seen you for a year. Well, since last year.
Since last year.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you tell that joke every year?
No, that was new. I'm working on it. I got to work on the delivery.
It's like my dad. My dad used to say that.
You did, yeah.
Yeah, we'd be going to bed on the 31st and see you next year.
Yeah.
Or the other one was I'll see you next month. What? Where are you going, Dad?
Or on the day after you say I haven't taken a shower for a year.
Yeah. Or the other thing he used to do is we'd be driving down the road and he'd wave. Hey, Dad, who was that? I don't know, but he's sure going to wonder all day long, huh?
Anyway, our guest is the lovely Karen Testerman tonight, and to bring some sort of calm and peace to this world of turmoil.
Yeah, well.
Turmoil. Let's see. You got a million people down in D.C. trying to cause a little bit of a scuffle, and some lady got killed. We had.
Did she die?
Did she die?
Yeah, I thought you said she did.
No, she got shot in the neck, and she was removed. But I haven't heard.
I haven't heard that she.
I've seen the video of her getting shot in the neck. I don't know what the Capitol Police were thinking, but
they panic or something.
They may have.
It had to be. I mean, because they were very deliberate in backing off and not using any type of deadly force. They were very deliberate and methodical in that, yet there was this incident.
Yeah.
So.
And I was getting texts and communication from people
that were there
on the scene.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And they were the typical people who get together and go to these peaceful demonstrations, you know?
Right.
Most people were going down to support the president. That was their primary focus. They weren't going down there to protest anything. I love the press because everything is a protest, no matter what it is, no matter how you put forth whatever. It's like the things going on here in New Hampshire, you know, where people are peacefully gathering. I'm referring primarily to the Newfield situation where the governor said, oh, well, we've had armed protests out there and so forth. And I've been listening to the conversations back and forth amongst the people who are there, and anybody who started to escalate anything, they isolated and removed. I mean, the whole purpose was, okay, you want to say we can't picket, we'll go and we'll have a peaceful prayer vigil, right?
Right.
Or, and they took it to the town hall and had an ecumenical prayer service.
Right.
So, you know, most of the people that I've talked to have all said, we don't want it to escalate. We want it to come to a peaceful solution. We want to have a conversation. We don't want to get into conflict of any sort.
I think that's typical of most conservatives such as us.
Yeah.
I mean, I was very upset when I saw what was happening on TV today.
Yeah.
And it's hard to project yourself into a crowd like that, especially if you're not someone who typically goes into a crowd like that. But it's also hard for me as a conservative to think that a group like that would resort to something like that.
Well, yeah. We've been down. I mean, I went down there for the Jericho, not for the Jericho March, but for the return, which was, again, a lot of people there gathering together primarily for prayer and peaceful gathering to demonstrate that they had support. And I can't imagine, like you said, I can't imagine them going in and all of a sudden pushing forward. There was not any of that.
That brings me to something that happened at the State House today. So the Democrat leader and the Republican leader got together and made a motion to suspend the rules so that they could pass a resolution to condemn the violence in Washington, D.C. And I was one of 35 people that voted against it. And the reason I voted against it is because we don't know what happened. We're sitting there.
We're still in the middle of it.
And you're escalating it.
Yeah.
That's through the
We're in the middle of the day.
Well,
we're sitting there pressing our buttons and voting on stuff. I can't sit there and watch the news, which I still wouldn't know what happened if I watched the news anyway, because they lie.
Right.
So we're sitting there voting on something, and we have no real idea what is going on. And so why are we passing a resolution? To make us look good? That's about it.
Yeah.
So to that point, there were two things that took place in the last couple of hours that made me stop and think, what really is going on in Washington today? Because we're being told that it's a bunch of Trump supporters. We're being told that they, conservatives are out of control. We're
I
starting
know.
violence, and it's perfect for the media because
Right.
for the first time, conservatives are the instigators of the violence, right? So the first thing that made me stop and think was the prepared speech that Joe Biden had. I don't know if you saw it or heard it, but it went on for 5 or 10 minutes. For a man who couldn't put two sentences together over the last 2 years of his campaign, he was very eloquent. Within an hour or so of this thing starting, he was on TV giving a speech about unity and about this particular incident. It was almost as though the speech was already written
And it
for
was staged.
a violent act to take place. So that's the first thing that gave me pause. Is what is really happening here? The second thing were these pictures that have come out of Washington today, but you're not going to see it on the mainstream media, but you'll see it here. Brendan, let's put up at least one of the two. Okay, so here's two photographs. See this guy in the bullhorns with the face painting?
Yeah.
That looks like the same guy on both pictures to me. I mean, it's got the same beard, the same cut of beard. And if you take a look at the picture on the left, outdoors, this man is attending an Antifa rally in Phoenix, Arizona this last summer. Antifa. Picture on the right was taken today inside the U.S. Capitol building.
Yep.
So this tells me, and if you flip to the next picture, Brendan, we see the same person here. On the right, you see him in his Antifa t-shirt without his gear on,
Right.
standing alongside his Antifa buddy. On the left, you can see a picture taken today. There's his buddy with the big beard on the far left, and there's him on the right in his gear. Antifa was at the Capitol building today. So there is some agitating. And so condemning the violence today, just knee-jerk while you're in the middle of session, you're absolutely right, Gary. We don't know what's going on down there.
And the press as usual.
And we're not necessarily blaming one side or the other. We can't.
Well, the thing is us three know enough about history to know that when you see something like that, you know that it was a setup, in that it was the perfect situation for paid agitators to go in and try to start something really bad
Right.
to make the Trump supporters look bad.
Right.
It was, I mean, any rudimentary understanding of the way the communists took over, the Nazis took over, it's all the same MO. It hasn't changed. And that's, to me, was the first thing I thought. So I'm not going to condemn violence that looks to me. Again, I say I didn't really have access to that much news. I get somebody in the car next to me is going, "Holy crap! To see what's going on in D.C." That was about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is insane to presume that what we're being told is happening.
Well, see, this goes back to the whole setup, is that so much of what we do today is trial by media. I mean, literally. Instead of assuming everyone is innocent until proven guilty, you're already guilty because the press says you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
So today, on the lighter side of the news, in December, the governor introduced emergency order number 76.
Yeah.
Emergency order number 76 requires it here. Well, it's sketchy. Okay, so in the emergency order, it calls it a vaccine event, a vaccinating event.
Oh.
Okay, so
That one.
the operative word is event. So the obvious translation of that is anybody who gets vaccinated in the state of New Hampshire will be put on a state database.
Right, it's a vaccine event. I give you a vaccination, that's an event that took place.
Right, okay, so everybody, now, under state law, people that receive a vaccine are allowed to not be put on a database. So he had to suspend the law. He also had to ignore the state constitution, Article 2, Part B, which says that people have a right to be secure in their own personal information.
Correct.
He had to, and he did all that in Emergency Order 76.
So we suspended the Constitution and we suspended
The law.
HIPAA laws, medical
So-
privacy laws.
So let me finish. So today I got yesterday I worked my butt off and finally got a House resolution together, and it was introduced today at the end of the session. And the House resolution just said that we asked the governor to reconsider his position on Emergency Order 76 because it's inconsistent with the Constitution, et cetera. And but we needed to suspend the rules to do that. We needed a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules, and we got like 140 to 150. So we didn't even come close to even getting a majority.
Right.
Or we were shy of getting a majority. So I just want you to know there are legislators at the State House that are fighting back against the overreach of government and the abuse of the Constitution. We're just not in the majority.
Right. So one of the things that most people don't realize is that, the governor sets the agenda for the executive council, right?
Yeah.
In this last term, he had 4-1, 4 Democrats to 1, so he knew what he was doing. I think he knows what he's doing. He, if he didn't want a subject to come up, he doesn't put it on the agenda, right? Because he controls the agenda.
Right.
So why did he, if he really respected our right to privacy, put the vaccine registry on the agenda 3 different times so it had its 3 different readings before the executive council approved it?
Right.
He's got ultimate interest in the vaccines, in my opinion, right? So he put that on, and now he's coming with this executive order that says that you will participate.
Right.
So I think he's driving it. He wants
Well,
wants every one of us to get the vaccine, and I want to know what the financial benefit is to him if we all get the vaccine. How much does the state or he personally get from each vaccine that is delivered?
Yeah, one of the implications of suspending that and requiring that a vaccine event be recorded is that a vaccine event isn't just you getting the vaccine, right? If you refuse the vaccine,
That's still part of the event.
if you walk into a doctor's office and you're there for your annual checkup, right, and the doctor offers you, say, hey, since you're here, why don't you take the vaccine? And you say, no, I'm good. I would
No,
prefer
thank you.
not to. Then that is a vaccine event.
Yeah.
That gets recorded.
Yep.
So the governor is keeping a list
And he's
of
checking
everybody
it
in the
twice.
state who accepted the vaccine, and he's also keeping a list of everybody in the state who hasn't got the vaccine. And guess which one of those 2 groups is going to be villainized?
Well,
for-
not only that, but you're now when you're being traced in this manner.
Exactly.
I
see
no longer
that you're not
you
on
don't
this
have
list.
You
didn't-
don't have your card with you, therefore you can't come in and you can't shop here, you can't eat here, you can't buy gas here.
You can't protest here. You can't speak here.
Right.
You
Can't travel.
You can't worship here.
You can't cross the border. You can't worship. That is the one thing that I think is really probably the most egregious thing that's been going on is the fact that there's been so much control. Now, he will tell you, I didn't tell you you couldn't go to church. But if you look at the regulations on the churches, you will individualize all delivery of the Holy Communion. It has to be individually packaged. You can only have so many people come in. You have to register in order to have less than the required 10 or whatever it happens to be. That is clearly violating. And then people have a religious objection in some cases to vaccines, to external medical treatment. And that's being ignored.
Yep.
Yep. But it won't be ignored if you're a Muslim, because it's okay to have a religious exemption there.
Well, I was wondering if those
Right.
people who were gathering out in front of his house, in the park in front of his house, if they said put on their BLM, their Black Lives Matter shirt, if there would be an objection.
Right.
No.
Well, there
I
was
actually,
a-
great minds think alike, and so do
There was
ours.
was it Dartmouth? There was one of the Ivy League colleges has put into place their rules that once the vaccine is available, everyone on campus has to get the vaccine. You will be vaccinated before you come on campus. But if you're Black or Latino and you object because you feel like this subjectifies you as a minor, as a minority, then you don't have to. So you can opt out based on your skin color, but you cannot opt out based on your religion.
That's when you self-identify as a Latino.
These are the types of rules that are coming down on college campuses. These are Ivy League campuses.
Yeah, it's racism.
And then you've got
It's discrimination. It
Cuomo
violates
in New
law.
York. He's telling hospitals, you have to administer the vaccine to these groups of people first, Black and poor, right, and elderly, and if you don't administer the vaccine fast enough, meaning every hospital gets so many vaccines, you have until Saturday to administer all of them. But you can only administer them to to these people. And so he's put in a fine system, right? It's $1,000 fine per person if you vaccinate the wrong people. But it's $100,000 fine if you don't use all your vaccines by the deadline, right? So he's trying to get as much of the population vaccinated as fast as possible, but he's going to fine you either way.
Yeah. That makes a
so
lot of sense. Well, did you know?
The point is everybody's going to be forced into this at some
Right.
point. That's what's happening on college campuses, schools, governors of multiple states, even governors who are supposedly conservative, like ours.
He's not conservative. Sorry.
You should be really sorry for telling the truth.
I know.
You
Well,
should be ashamed of yourself.
I should be.
Speaking the truth in a public.
I'm hanging my
forum.
head in shame.
Good,
Yeah,
good. It's
okay.
about time.
So it's interesting because there are rumors, not necessarily rumors, there's actually been some eyewitnesses that the vaccines actually carry a chip in them that's supposed to identify the particular dose that you got, right? But thanks to Neil Kirk, he introduced a few years ago a bill that prohibits subcutaneous chipping. And so people do have a backstop that they can
You mean
fall back on.
forced subcutaneous chipping? Or-
It's illegal well, it would have to be forced because if you objected,
Right.
but you have
I
this
guess what I'm
law
saying is
now.
that there are some technology companies that are doing exactly that. So
Right.
anyone who has an access card or key fob for their car, they're voluntarily getting the key fob chip put in under their
Hand,
skin
so
of
their
their
skin-
hand,
so they can-
just swipe their hand in front of their car, or
Right,
swipe
some-
their hand in front of a door.
Well, they do that
and
in-
it's voluntary. Are you
Right.
saying that was made illegal in New Hampshire, or
No, I'm sure it's
Or
involuntary.
involuntary, okay.
You know,
That's
it's
what I'm
involuntary.
getting at.
Well, yeah, but with all understanding what's going on right now, where the governor is just basically ignoring the laws and the Constitution,
Right.
why
And-
is that even relevant?
That's very true. But, at least people might have something to stand on if they wanted to argue it to a point.
They
But,
should have something to stand on now when they take down. They should be able to sue because their information is being taken down against their will.
and, when you're listening to Linwood and Sidney Powell present their cases about voter fraud,
Mm-hmm.
we have identical situations here in New Hampshire, all across the board. So I think we've had a fraudulent election as well. And one of the things that we do here in New Hampshire is that all voting must be done by paper ballot, right?
But
what we
paper
need
ballots can be counted by machines.
Exactly. So what we need to do in each of our towns is introduce their warrant articles that all ballots will be counted by hand. I mean, small towns do it all the time. The places where they'd have the most challenge would be places like Manchester, where your ward has probably 8,500 people in it to 9,000, right?
Well-
But that just means that you get more clerks in there to do the counting. But most towns are about 2,000 to 3,000, and a lot of the towns do already count. They don't use the AccuVote optic reader. Now, the interesting thing about the AccuVote optic reader is that it's owned by Dominion and Diebold.
Why do you say that? Where do you come up with evidence that that
So-
votes were perverted?
One of the places that you start questioning is, how did we flip the state red and the federal remained blue, but extremely blue? I mean, Trump, who lost by 2,000 some odd votes the last time, now loses by 10 times that much, right? What came up in Wyndham was there's 4 representatives there, all Republicans, but the 4th Republican and the 5th person on the list was the Democrat. The difference in their vote was like 24, so they recounted, right? When they did the recount, the 4 Republicans gained almost 300 votes each.
Wow.
So there's a question mark
Because
going
every
on
time
there.
I've done a recount or been involved in a recount, the vote flip is like 2 or 3.
Yeah, it's not that many.
So
I mean-
300 is really weird.
Right. So we had that, and then I had a lady talking to me about the fact that she was one of the observers, and she was required to stand across the room to observe.
Well, it's a convenient fact of COVID is
Right.
being required to social distance.
Right.
So you can't see there's nothing to observe at that point.
Well, the other thing that went on, and I think is odd. Well, besides the fact that we also then expanded the Constitution without going through the proper process to expand the Constitution. So if you look at
What do you mean? expanded
Article
the
11 in Part 1 of the Constitution, it says that the legislature will provide rules so that people can get their absentee ballot if they are absent from their community or they are physically disabled and can't get there.
Yeah.
Well, then 1266 was passed this last year, right? And it expands it to if you're afraid of COVID, if your babysitter doesn't show up, there's any number of other reasons that you can now get an absentee ballot, which
Right.
in essence is an expansion of your mail-in.
Right, but isn't that, yes, it is. But wasn't that voted on by the legislature?
It was voted on by the legislature, but if you're going to change the Constitution, what are you supposed to do?
Oh, okay.
You're supposed to present a
Amendment.
constitutional amendment, what is that, resolution,
Yeah.
concurrent
You're gonna
resolution.
change the language of something
And-
that's in the Constitution.
Right.
It can't
have
be
to amend
just
it.
the
You have to
legislature.
amend the Constitution. So you're supposed to present that, CACR, to each house. They're supposed to pass it by 2/3. Then it's supposed to go on the ballot for we, the governed, to say yes or no. And they didn't do that. So we've had a fraudulent election just based on that.
Right.
Very interesting. You know, there's a lot of stuff going.
on. It's so horrible, so quick.
Yep. And why people are frustrated at this point, you know. So,
Yeah, I don't know. I just it's been crazy. All the voting today was just so insane.
so are
So-
you going
so-
to get back into the State House, into the People's House, so that we can watch what you do?
Well, theoretically, under the new type systems, you could watch,
But I don't get to see you stand up in front of everybody and talk.
Right.
All I get to see is you in your car, along
So-
with everybody else in their car.
So who
Right.
was making speeches and how was everybody in their cars hearing it?
a radio.
Okay, so you were broadcasting over the
It was
radio.
broadcast over the radio.
Was I
was
allowed
live-
to
it was
drive
li-
up and listen to?
Oh,
No.
10 people. It was limited to 10 people that could come and watch.
It was live streamed over the I think the state website.
And we were able to count each car horn?
No, no, that would have been pretty tough.
Did you do any roll call votes?
Yeah, we did some roll call votes.
And how did you manage that? How did that take
They
place?
had buttons,
And everybody was within range?
just barely. I had like
Well,
I
that's
got out of
just
my
it. Were there conservatives that were out of range and
Yes.
liberals that were in range?
correct.
Okay.
But if you didn't weren't able to register your vote because you were too far out of range, you could either text the clerk or flash your lights.
Okay, and those votes were counted. We know that. We know that for a
I
fact.
wouldn't guess if quite a few were not counted.
Okay.
I'm sure, because I know at least one of them was mine, because I'm sitting there, and it's a
So-
vote, and I'm sitting there, I never quite
The
got through.
actions that took place today, what type of actions took place today, and what type of action needs to take place in order to move back to the State House? And I got so many questions.
I know you do, I know.
Me too. I'm waiting for
Well,
the great Gary to give us this one.
Why don't you
answer.
ask me questions? You're nicer than he is.
Well, I want to know, how are you going to get back to the State House?
The theory is that we should be able to, sorry, my eyes are a little bit messed up. That they're increasing the, improving the air filtration system in the house. And they believe they'll start being able to have like regular hearings inside the committee rooms again soon. But I don't know how soon.
You know, according to Father Tudor, our priest, the I think it's myrrh or frankincense, one of the two incenses. If we, when you go into some of the higher churches and they incense everything,
I see. Yeah.
that's supposed to be a disinfectant. So maybe they could just do the incense every.
That might trigger a few non-Christians.
Yes. That actually be pretty funny, though. It would be really great. One of the fathers walking through with a little.
That's right.
It would be
Blessing everybody as they go
Blessing
through, right?
We could use it, but so there's that. Theoretically, we should be able to be in there soon, but it's all. To me, it's just all smoke and mirrors. It is. If you look at the big picture, it's just fear.
Okay.
That's all it is. I don't know. You might know this number, but I can't find. I didn't look for it, honestly. But my understanding is the average age of a person passing away from COVID is something like 87 or something.
It's above 70, and they keep when they report it. So here's the part of the problem with them reporting a
let
COVID.
me finish the question,
Yeah.
then you can. So, I thought it was like, like 78 or 80, and the average life expectancy is only 72. So the average life expectancy of somebody with COVID is actually higher than the average life expectancy. So the people aren't really dying prematurely, is my point.
Correct. And since when is it government's role to prevent people from dying? And if it is, why are we all driving cars?
Yeah.
If you're not supposed to be able to die,
Well, just give it time. I mean,
You haven't seen the new Green
Biden
Deal,
hasn't
have
been
you?
inaugurated yet. When he does, the lockdown will get worse. There will be a point where you're not allowed to drive a car because cars are evil greenhouse gas emitting devices that will be illegal and are already declared illegal in California as of 2035 or something like that.
well, yeah,
So yeah, give it time.
give it time.
Yep.
That's the best answer I've heard. Yeah, but the problem. So the average age is in the 70 to 80s. I think
Right.
it is closer to 80, quite honestly. And it is primarily New Hampshire ranks in the highest percentage-wise of our population. We have the highest percentage rate of people dying in long-term care facilities.
Right.
But the interesting thing is that way back at the beginning of April, I think it was Scott. What's his last name? He's a state legislator in Illinois. He's a doctor, and he produced the paper from the CDC that said you will qualify everybody as COVID deaths if at all possible.
Right.
Yeah, so we don't even know if it's a legitimate COVID death. The other thing is that when they come
Well,
out and
that
they
just gives me free reign. There's a lot of people out there that I don't like, and if they die suddenly, I'm not going to be charged with murder, right? All they have to do is test positive.
well, and so this is really interesting because
That idea.
because when they report the cases, they're not telling you if the person has symptoms. And they've already
Well,
demonstrated that, or come out
Cases versus
that
active illness
Right.
is
It's a
something
huge
that
thing,
you're not
right.
being told the difference between.
And they've also come out and said that it's the symptomatic cases with long exposure that causes it to be transmitted from one person to the other.
Well,
So if
there's a
you're
study of
asymptomatic,
10 million people in the city of Wuhan, China, came out a week or so ago. 10 million person study shows there's no such thing as asymptomatic transmission.
right?
None.
And
right?
my friend
and
said,
this is where it started. This is
so my friend
It's a
sent me a
smokescreen.
note and said, the CCP is the Chinese Communist Party is behind so much that is undermining us. Why would we believe anything? Not even a 10 million person study
Right.
that comes out of China.
Oh yeah, but
Well,
But it does-
The
I
point
mean,
is, there are
I'm-
studies out there that show that this asymptomatic transmission is not occurring.
Absolutely.
And speaking of China, just because you brought it up, China's on a war footing. I don't know if anybody's
Yeah.
seen that, right? What's his face has told the army, be ready any minute.
Any
now,"
minute,
right?
right.
They're starting to arrest pro-democracy people in Hong Kong, right? They're ready. As soon as Biden takes office,
We're
I'm
in war.
expecting Hong Kong to disappear.
Right.
And I'm also expecting Taiwan to disappear. And I'm not expecting NATO or Biden or the United States to step
Wait,
in and
wait, you-
protect Taiwan.
Correct.
Well, do you
They're on a
really,
war footing, and they can see the light at the end of the tunnel for taking Taiwan as a
Yeah,
Chinese
but, I mean,
territory.
Biden would lose a lot of money if he did something.
He's
no,
so
that's-
rich.
that-
They've paid him
exactly.
so much already. He
Exactly.
doesn't have to worry
Biden-
about ever being
Biden
without money.
has no intention of honoring any loyalty to Taiwan. That's my prediction. In the next 12 months, we're going to hear about a move on Hong Kong and Taiwan by China.
Okay, so on the subject of China, I figured out a long time ago that if you want to determine somebody's motivation or somebody's, basically what somebody did, what was the cause or what somebody actually did as opposed to what they said and what was reported, the best thing to do is look at results. And if you look at the results, you can typically figure out what the most likely cause was, as opposed to what you're being told, because we're being told mostly lies now in the media anyway. China had 3 huge glaring problems with it last year. One was that because of Mao's one-child policy, they have a wicked top-heavy population. There's way too many elderly people and not enough people to take care of them. And they're also elderly, so they're not necessarily productive members of society anymore. Problem 1. Problem 2 was Hong Kong. Hong Kong's push for freedom was starting to spread, actually into Wuhan and other places. Problem number 3 was trade. Trump was making a pretty good inroads into taking production back from China and back to the United States.
Correct.
The Wuhan laboratory that this came out of, I believe, was just like you have designer drugs. I think this is a designer virus that was geared towards taking out the elderly, panicking the population, and it was intentionally spread worldwide to hopefully disrupt Trump's reelection because they don't like him. I don't know that they planned that. I think that was more wishful thinking. But they knew that they could, that the trade deal that Trump had with China was contingent on that everything went smoothly and there was no emergencies. There was actually a clause in that trade deal so that they could weasel out of some of the deals if there was an emergency. So it looks to me like, this was designed a long time ago. They had it waiting in the wings, and they released it. And it's possible that some of these vaccines were already had been worked on already.
So the virus already has, according to some reports, a patent number.
Well, there was a patent number before the virus was discovered. The patent is on COVID in general, right? So this was COVID-19, i.e. it was named during the year 2019. That's why it's COVID-19. But my understanding is that a patent had already been held and generated by so it was a generic patent on the method of creating a vaccine for a COVID disease.
Event? Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, SARS, COVID, those are all COVID diseases.
Well, they're all coronaviruses.
Right, they're all coronaviruses. But that patent was generated by organizations linked to both Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates.
Correct. So anyway,
That's a coincidence, huh?
is that you think?
Weird. That's weird.
Well, and the economic World Economic Forum talks about a pandemic that was going to happen in 2020, and that they had these little exercises going on beforehand. And there's a lot of different dots that we could connect. But as I tell everybody on my radio program, don't take my word for it. Go out and do your own research.
Yep.
Go out and use your noggin and see what you come up with. But it certainly does look like there is a definite plan, and hence why the plandemic
Yeah, that's why a lot of people
terminology.
call it the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah, because it was
And it is to instill fear, because if you look at what we're doing, as Roosevelt said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, and people are afraid of infecting somebody or or getting it because sometimes when you get the flu, it's not very pleasant.
Yeah.
And so, anyway.
Yeah, I think it would have been a lot wiser to concentrate on helping the people who are actually vulnerable.
Well, it would have been nice to treat it like Kristi Noem did, the governor from South Dakota, who turned around and said, what can I constitutionally do as governor? And she decided that, or through her advice and so forth, said, what I can do is I can tell my people, this is what we're getting as a report. These are the conditions that could be harmful to you. Assess your own situation, and you decide. And she didn't close the economy down.
Yep.
She's not eliminating the middle class, which is what we're doing right now by not being open.
Would you call it fleecing?
Well, yeah, I would say something like that. It's very frustrating, though,
get
because
that?
you see these people.
It looks as though it went. I didn't catch it soon enough.
Uh-oh.
Brendan.
Call back. Call back.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. Call back.
They're still on hold.
Oh, they're still on hold. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Wait. Here we go.
Oh.
Hello. Welcome to Rock Paper Hand Grenades.
No, it's asking us to enter a number.
Oh.
Uh-oh. All right. Call back. So
I'll let you in.
Sorry about that.
the whole thing is, though, is that we don't hear about automobile deaths. We don't hear about heart attack deaths. We don't hear about cancer deaths. All we hear about is COVID.
Oh well, last week? No, the last week in December, the flu statistics are down 99.5% from the same week last year.
Wonder why?
No one is testing for flu. You walk in with an upper respiratory infection,
And it's
you're
COVID.
you're being told or tested for COVID, and no one is doing any flu tests.
So
the flu has been cured for the world.
by COVID.
That's by COVID. Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Silver lining.
Well, so one of the things that
go.
people
That
should.
was me testing it.
Oh. Well, I was paying attention this time.
With you and not me.
So it's really interesting that I wonder how many people stop and think that if they've tested positive for COVID,
We got to get this.
All right. Sorry about that. Welcome to Walk Paper Hand Grenades. Is this Robert?
Yes, it is. Who's this?
This is Joshua and Gary and Karen.
Oh, yeah, John. Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt the discussion you're having right now, but I was watching your show earlier, then I changed over to David Muir, and I just wanted to let you guys know, and the lady on your show, that woman that was shot passed away.
All right, yes.
Wow.
So she did pass
They
away.
didn't get into any more, like, how she was shot or who shot her or any specifics, but
that's too
she
bad.
did pass away. I just wanted to let you guys know.
Thank you.
We were
All right.
talking about it earlier.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
So
that's
if
So again, we
that
don't
is
have
sad.
a whole lot of information, but
Right.
prayers to her and her family.
Right, exactly. And if it was an officer that shot her, he goes through a lot too.
My
as
understanding
well.
is that there weren't any weapons brought in by anyone outside.
Yeah.
So, whatever precipitated it had to be severe enough that an officer was in fear of his life.
Right. And
would
quite honestly, just an aside for the officers, we don't often realize what goes on if there is an incident that involves a discharge of a weapon. That officer is immediately charged, and he has to go until he or
removed
she
from
goes
duty,
through
yeah.
all of the process. They're on administrative leave in
wow.
essence, and so and it is traumatic. Because anytime you discharge a weapon and take a life, it is traumatic for the person who discharged the weapon as well as the person who's there. So anyway,
Yep.
there again. But so if people are tested positive with COVID, why do you need the vaccine? If you've already had it,
Right.
why do you need to get the vaccine?
Because somebody's got to make money. I don't know what you're thinking. You're a capitalist. This is like the perfect capitalist nightmare. People have to take it. to keep their jobs and have to take it to get on a plane. There's
Yep.
a lot of money to be made here. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's the other thing. I don't understand why they're trying to push to have everybody vaccinated when if a good percentage of the people had it and are recovered, and another percentage are vaccinated. I don't know what the percentage is, but there's a certain a threshold where the vaccine just can't travel anymore because there's nobody to catch it.
Well, exactly, and that's why vaccines will mutate. It's because once they run out of customers, so to speak, then they
mean
change.
the virus itself
The
will
viruses, yeah.
Not the vaccine.
I'm sorry, I did say vaccine. But the other thing is that the concern with this particular vaccine is the use of the mRNA. We don't know what they're doing, and if you were to go through normal processing on developing a vaccine, it goes over several years.
Right. Yep.
So
yep.
they're telling me that something that they've developed in the last 4 months is
perfectly
safe. You don't know. You haven't put it into people's bodies long enough
So
to observe.
I've got information from friends and friends of friends about a particular incident here in New Hampshire. I don't know if you're aware of it. It's a nursing home in Dover. I'm not going to name the name. There was a story about this nursing home just before Christmas that they were receiving the vaccine, the workers and the patients, and the story was produced on a major news outlet here in New Hampshire. And the director of the facility, during the story, he was grateful that his patients and his workers were being vaccinated. But during the story, he happened to mention, we have, over 100 of our residents die every year. So I did the math. There's 100 residents in this nursing home die every year. That's one every 3.5, 4 days.
Right?
Right? Maybe 2 a week.
Yep.
There was never a follow-up story done on this particular nursing home, but it did come out in social media that at that particular nursing home, immediately after the vaccinations were administered to everybody, in one shift, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift, 4 residents died.
Yeah.
In the very next shift, 3 more died.
Right.
So in a 24-hour period, a nursing home that only has 1 or 2 deaths a week
Right.
had 7 in 24 hours immediately after receiving the vaccine. And
Wow.
that's one of those stories that there was no follow-up,
Right.
right? We didn't hear about that story. We heard the good news story, the good time story about everybody getting vaccinated and,
Right.
and being
Well,
saved.
and you brought up another point though. In nursing homes, every fall and winter, we lose patients more so than we do during the rest of the year.
Right.
And it's normal because they obviously their immune systems are aging. They get a virus or a cold, and it challenges them to the point where they lose their life. But it's a part of the normal progression. It's not.
No, I agree with that.
Something.
It's just the numbers
But
don't
that is
don't
very.
add up. That's
I heard
that's-
something, and you're right.
That's,
It sort of was
an
bing,
anomaly
and
in
then
those
no
statistics
more,
where you
right.
get 7 in one day as opposed to 1 a week.
Or the nurse that came out very happy that she had received the vaccination and passed out, and I understand that she did die.
So
Well,
the
well
question-
I know that my friend's a nurse, and she said, "Are you going to get the vaccination?" And I said, "Nope." I said, "I get real bad allergies. I mean, like really, really bad allergies. If somebody's going to have an allergic reaction to that vaccine, I'm a really great candidate for that." And she said, well, when they show up to vaccinate people, they have a kit in case somebody goes into anaphylactic shock.
Save it.
So
I don't want you using it on me.
I didn't say anything because I really like her and she's really nice to me. But I'm thinking, So many people are reacting so profoundly to this that it is now protocol to have something to prevent an anaphylactic shock death. Maybe it's not that safe, and maybe, at least me, I probably, because most people have an allergic reaction. It's kind of, I think it's usually pretty slow and progresses and gets pretty bad. But me, it's like really quick. The last time I had an allergic reaction was from eating a cookie, and I think it was only half a cookie. And by the time I got to the ER, my blood pressure was 10 over 30, or 30 over 10. What's the big number? 30 over 10. And my legs were buckling.
Wow.
Okay, so I can't, if I have a reaction to it, I bet it's a lot more deadly than the virus would be.
Well, and the other dirty secret is that legislation was passed that if there is an emergency situation. Now, this legislation was passed back in 2005 at the federal level. If there is an emergency situation, which we're under right now, any vaccine that is administered, the producing company, the manufacturers, or the developers, the manufacturers, the administrators, that means doctors, nurses, pharmacists, whoever, are all exempt from any liability.
Yeah, what a coincidence.
Isn't that nice?
That is very nice.
They're all exempt.
Yep.
So there's no recourse if you have a reaction to it.
Right, that's exactly right.
If you do get the vaccine, you still have to wear your mask. You still have to social distance. They're not going to they're not going to take away the state of emergency. So I'm having a very hard time understanding the benefit of receiving the vaccine.
Well, and of wearing the masks, for which there is no law, and social distancing, for which there is no scientific evidence that it has any effect at all.
Oh, no, there's scientific evidence to the contrary, right?
Oh, yes.
There's plenty of studies that show that there are no transmissions from asymptomatic people. That's the science, but you're not being told that.
Right. There's a great article out by John Rappaport that goes through all of the things, the terminology that's used. It's sort of those little weasel kind of words that can go one way or the other, but if you really examine it.
It's a language thing.
Like when
Right.
they say call it a vaccinating event.
Yeah.
Right.
Event is such a good word.
Yeah.
It's such a...
I can say, well, there was no event with me because I didn't get vaccinated. Well, the event was that
That
your
you
doctor asked you and you said no. That's the event, right? So but everywhere we go in the media, in politics, we're seeing exactly that. It's our language being taken away from us and used against us.
Right.
You're
right.
being told what you can and can't say.
Hey, we got to go. Karen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know why you're sorry. But anyway, how do people get in touch with you, or how do they watch your program?
Okay, so my program is on Mondays and Fridays on WSMN in Nashua on the radio.
Way down south.
Yeah, you can go. The best thing to do is go to WSMN.live, and you can click on the little Listen Live button, and between 12 and 1 on Mondays and Fridays. Or I'm also on Truth, Justice, and Me, usually on Wednesday evenings from 6 to 8. But I came in over here instead today.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if somebody wants to get in touch with me, it's Karen at KarenTesterman.com.
Karen, you're awesome. You've been.
Thank you.
You know, it's like we've been fighting this battle for 20 years together.
I know.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
I met Karen back when I was a Frenchman legislator, and it's
Frenchman?
freshman, yeah,
Okay.
whatever it is.
That's when his daughter wore a pro-life T-shirt to school and was told that she couldn't wear it. She needed to take it off.
Yeah.
Oh, which, by the way, Saturday is the Life March in Concord at 11 o'clock
11 o'clock at the State House.
at the State House.
11
Yep.
o'clock, State House, pro-life. There's a lot of things in the Bible about Christ returning and all, and I think he's coming soon. But there is no place in the Bible where it says give up.
That's
We'll
right.
See you next week.
Thank you.